All right, so I'm going to talk about LP wide area networks and the security in them. So before we start, how many know what a LPWAN is? All right, so almost no one. And then you probably then don't know Sigfox. Anyone? Or LoRa? Some, yeah. So just a quick, since Johan had such a nice presentation, I had to make one myself. I'm chapter leader at OWASP. I'm a core team member of an open source project called MySensors, which helps people build their own IoT devices. And I'm a writer for a Swedish computer magazine called Datormagazin, where I've written a bit more than 80 articles. One of the most recent articles was about this little thing I built. It's a screen. Let's see if I can. That you can play Tetris on. So the screen is about this size. But pure 16:9 format, it has 16 pixels by 9 pixels. So the key takeaways for this is to give you an overview what a low power wide area network is and why they can be important. And what security mechanisms they provide, and to raise some curiosity, because there's a lot of things you can dive into here. So LPWAN is a low power wide area network. A single device can last for more than 10 years, reporting every 10 minutes on 2 regular batteries. So they use about as much power as the self-discharge of the battery. And if you compare this to regular Wi-Fi, the maximum output is 25 milliwatts, and a Wi-Fi uses 100 milliwatts. But still, you get a range of 15 to 40 kilometers per base station. And I don't think you're getting that range from your Wi-Fi at home. It uses the ISM band, which is unlicensed, and depending on which region in the world, it's either 868 megahertz, 902 megahertz, or 915 megahertz. And the network part is, of course, where this gets interesting from a security standpoint. And just a note on these 15 to 40 kilometers radius. That's of course theoretical, but you can also go higher. The world record for LoRa is 702 kilometers. But that was a high altitude weather balloon, so they're cheating a bit. But anyway, 702 kilometers for a 25 milliwatt sending power is pretty impressive. The network is message oriented, so there's no interactivity. The rules say that you are not allowed to transmit more than, and it depends a bit on the frequency band, but about 1% of the time. So like your Wi-Fi, it's going to be on and just use the radio as much as it can. Here you're only allowed to use it 1% of the time. So you send a message, you don't get a reply, you don't know anything. And the message sites, for Sigfox, you can send a maximum of 12 bytes. So you're not going to surf the internet on this. And for LoRaWAN, you can send a bit more, but if you do, you'll have to keep silent to stay under the 1% utilization.
Sorry, when you say you send it and you don't know anything? anything? Are you implying that it's like stateless? Surely there must be some acknowledgement.
No, no acknowledgement. You can request something that in these networks is called a downlink. This is always initiated by sending an uplink because these devices are meant to be sleeping, so you can't reach them. So they need to say, I'm ready to receive something. And for Sigfox, you can do that 4 times per 24 hours. That's it.
How does the sender know that the receiver actually did receive the message?
You don't know if it was received. So that's a big limitation, absolutely. You might not want to use this for something that's super critical. But I'll show you that it is used for some critical cases. I'll show that later. And for LoRa, which is another technology, you can have 10 messages per 24 hours downlink. So still very few. And sending up, it's about the same as Sigfox with sending a message every 10 minutes maximum. But you can send, since you can send more bytes, you might have to keep quiet for longer times. One thing that's quite interesting is that this is low cost. If you buy a subscription from like Telia, what you're paying today is 99 euros per month for a 10 device kit, which then means 12 euros per device a year. No, sorry, 120 euros per device a year. And if you instead buy these devices, you can get away with about 1/10 of the cost for low volumes. And if you go high volumes, you can even get down to about 1% of the cost compared to using GSM. So to compare Sigfox and LoRaWAN, we are missing, it says differences there in case you can't see it. So Sigfox has coverage in 36 countries, 660 million people. They have the last 3 or 4 years doubled the coverage every year, and they plan to do that next year as well, going to 60 countries and I think about 1 billion people. So that's pretty impressive. For LoRaWAN, yeah, they have coverage, but there's no really global network provider like it does on Sigfox. The big difference is that for Sigfox, you have to make do with what Sigfox provides, just like your phone. If there's bad coverage where you are, you can of course ask Telia or Tele2 to put up a base stations, but they're not going to care. And it's probably the same thing with Sigfox. But with LoRa, you can put up your own gateway or your own base station. You can put up as many as you like. It's unlicensed. So you can get coverage where you want, which is a big upside. Let's say you have somewhere in like a farm and you want to keep track of all the animals. You could put up a base station and have your farmland covered. And when it comes to the backend, Sigfox takes care of that for you, which means you can't have it. But for LoRa, you can choose local providers. There exists some here in Gothenburg. You can use something called the Things Network that is mainly open source, or you can build your own backend system. Of course, when looking at something, we want to look at the whole system. And we have the physical device, the radio communication, base stations or gateways, depending on Sigfox calls them base stations, while LoRa calls them gateways. It's basically the same thing. then communication from the gateway or base station to the backend system itself, and the backend communication to your application, because you probably want this data to end up somewhere in an application that you write. So I'll show you where the network takes responsibility and where you need to take responsibility. So starting with a physical device, you want to protect someone from destroying it to extract the keys and from modifying the firmware. Both LoRaWAN and Sigfox use keys per device. So if someone gets hold of your device, they can spoof that device and they can eavesdrop on the communication, but it only affects one device. So that's pretty good. But except that, none of these systems are going to help you. So you'll need to make sure you have some sort of physical protection, or that you have secure elements to protect keys so they can't be extracted, and that firmware updates are signed and verified when the unit boots up. For LoRaWAN, there is a working proof of concept together with ARM, the CPU provider, that can distribute new firmware through the network. It's a bit tricky since you have all these limitations and you don't get acknowledgements, but they have something that actually works. They showed it a few months ago. So they are working to get that into the standard. Sigfox says use something else, like LTE or something. Which, well, okay, at least they say that it's out of scope for their part, and you'll have to handle it. I've even saw someone suggesting that you should use Bluetooth for the firmware updates. This is like, well, if I have 1 million of those devices, am I going to go and up to each and one of them and update them through Bluetooth? I don't think so. So that's something you need to take care of. So for the radio communication, each Sigfox device is provisioned with a unique authentication key, and all messages are protected by a message authenticity code. So that's fine. They explicitly have no encryption, so all data is sent in the clear. So that is something you need to be aware of, and if you build one of those devices, you will either have to accept that the data is in the clear or add your own encryption. That can be a bit troublesome though, because you have 12 bytes payload. AES works on a minimum of 16 bytes, so you can't use AES. Not in the regular modes at least. The AES in counter mode, where you produce a key stream and XOR, is something that you could actually use. Then for privacy, if you're sending data and someone can hear that data, maybe that is signal enough. So maybe that is a problem, and then radio might not be a good solution for you. Sigfox's goal is to have each location, like where we are right now, covered by 3 gateways. So if I send a message from one of my devices, at least one of those 3 gateways should capture it. Unless you have a lot of jamming going on. What I've seen so far is that it's about as jamming resistant as GSM, which isn't great, but it's a bit at least. So for Sigfox, the radio packet format looks like this. The interesting part is that everything is protected by the MAC, and you have up to 96 bits or 12 bytes for payload. There's also a sequence counter included, and that makes sure that there can't be any replay attacks. So that's pretty good. For the base stations, they can look like this. This is a photo I took a few weeks ago. All these stations have a trusted platform module, and they verify the integrity of the operating system, and it contains the key, VPN key for connecting to the backend. So pretty good. If you're using LoRa, you will probably put up your own base station, or you will ask someone else to do it. Then make sure that they have a similar protection. From the backend, because Sigfox will pick up the message from the device in their network. It will be routed to the backend and then delivered to your application. And that message from the backend to your application is through HTTPS, so fairly protected. And then, of course, the security of your application is your responsibility. That you'll have to take care of. One thing that I find a bit unfortunate is that Sigfox states that they use state-of-the-art solutions. State-of-the-art solutions have been deployed to ensure the integrity, availability, and confidentiality of the device's authentication keys as well as traffic metadata. To me, every time someone says something like this, it means that either they don't know what they're talking about, or they are afraid that if someone learns exactly how it works, it's going to be broken. And that's not good. But at least they didn't put military grade in there. And to get more information, you'll need to sign an NDA, which can also be a bad sign. So if you decide to build something that uses a Sigfox device, you'll need to decide if you trust Sigfox or not. If you don't, then either add additional protection or use an alternative where you take the end-to-end responsibility, for example, than LoRa. For the LoRa packet format, it's a bit similar, but it includes encryption, so it can't be eavesdropped. Let's see here. So we have the physical payload, which contains the MAC payload. And the MAC payload is encrypted, and everything is protected by the message integrity code. And there is a counter that says that here are the 16 bits that make sure that you can't replay a message. So here, LoRaWAN has a bit better security than Sigfox, since they encrypt the package, but except that, it's the same principle. The Things Network, which is a global provider for LoRa. I don't know if you remember something called FON that appeared maybe 15 years ago. Everyone could put up their own Wi-Fi router and everyone else could use them. Great idea. I don't think it ever took off. TTN is something similar. Anyone can put up their own TTN gateway, and it all forwards to the same backend. So there's actually one here in Mölndal, some enthusiast who's put up a gateway. There was one at Lindholmen that was put up by Cybercom, but for some reason it's no longer there. So it's a bit unreliable, but everyone can put up one, and you can use anyone else's gateway. The keys that are used currently, the Things Network backend decrypts all the data for you and hands it over to you unencrypted, which is a bit stupid. But with the next version, they are planning that the data will be encrypted all the way to your application, and they don't have the key to decrypt. They only have a different key to authenticate. So they will not forward anything to you that doesn't authenticate, which is good, but they can't read what they are forwarding. So some real-world examples. Securities Direct, which provides home alarms and alarms for companies. They uses a Sigfox device to report GSM jamming attacks. And in 2014, they deployed 1 million of those devices. So there's 1 million of those devices just for Securities Direct in France. That's how big this is. And they deployed those 3 years ago. And I don't think very many people are aware and look at this. A more local project, it says air and water IoT. It's a project here where the city of Gothenburg collects data around the city for water and air quality, and that is sent through LoRaWAN. They got 2 million Swedish crowns for this project, and it is up and running. So if you want to try to receive these messages, you can probably just set up something and listen. So if you want to get your hands dirty, what you can do is you can capture some traffic with Wireshark. There exists Sigfox and LoRaWAN dissectors to listen on this. The Sigfox is a work in progress. It doesn't do that much, but it exists. The LoRaWAN dissector was written by someone employed at Orange, which is a big operator in France. The documentation is in French, so if you want to practice your French, go ahead. With a software-defined radio, you can listen to these devices, and you can decode the messages. There exists both for Sigfox and for LoRa to decode this. And you can, of course, get your own radio module or device. I have some with me today, so if you want to see them afterwards, just get hold of me. The LoRa device, which is on top here, it runs Python, and it costs 379 Swedish crowns. You can order them at m.nu. For the Sigfox devices, the best place I've found is a French company, a device like the one down there, which is delivered with 1 year subscription for the global Sigfox network, costs 24 euros. And you can also build your own gateway, at least for LoRaWAN. For Sigfox, you can't. And if you want to learn more, there are some links here, and the presentation will be made available to anyone, so you can continue your research. There's one guy called Matt Knight who held one talk at GNU RadioCon and one at CCC last year, who's done a lot of reverse engineering of these protocols, which is his work is really impressive, and he's also written the main part of the GNU Radio companion plugins to decode LoRa. And I'll just skip a bit forward here. This is what a Sigfox message looks like when you're receiving it with a software-defined radio. All Sigfox messages are sent 3 times on different frequencies, and you can see here they are different. That is to ensure that you don't if there's something else that has a strong signal in one frequency, if you use 3 random, you should get through. And a LoRa message looks a bit more weird. That's because it uses something called frequency chirping. During the message, they constantly change the frequency. And this is not my image. This is from at night. But it doesn't look that good on the projector. But you can see some slanted things, and that's how it changed in frequency over time. It's also possible to buy an industrial LoRaWAN router from Cisco. I think this is about 50,000 Swedish crowns. Or you can buy it from the Things Network. They did a Kickstarter project, and like most Kickstarter projects, this is severely delayed, but they have received the first production samples that they are verifying, so full production should start within a few weeks. This is the Sigfox coverage in Sweden, and well, I don't know if someone is from the northern part of Sweden here. Everyone knows that Sweden ends somewhere at Sundsvall, right? There's no coverage north anyway, which is a bit boring, but for the south of Sweden, it looks pretty okay. And to compare, the Things Network has coverage, well, locally here in Mölndal, except that nothing in Gothenburg, but around the world, this is what it looks like. Each blob is at least one gateway, which is pretty nice. And this is from the world record when they sent a message at 702 kilometers distance. So that's it for me.
Any questions? What's the difference between LoRa and LoRaWAN?
LoRa is the physical radio protocol. LoRaWAN is when you have gateways, so it handles distribution of keys and forwarding, deduplication, because if you just have the LoRa network, you send a message and someone receives it. LoRaWAN makes sure that you get, for every message, you get one callback. For example, you can configure it to do a HTTP post to your server. So that LoRa does that whole way, while LoRa is just a communication from one radio to another radio.
So for LoRa, how are these limits enforced? If you can set up your own base station, your own device, what's keeping you from sending more data than you're supposed to according to these limits?
Not much. If you do something that gets big and commercial, you will probably be shut down because you are interfering with other people. That's my guess. But until you get big or someone gets pissed off because you are disturbing their traffic, probably nothing is going to happen. It's like driving too fast on the motorway. It's illegal, but if no one sees you, it's not a problem. Did I get on the recording? Sorry. But to be fair, I would say that this is interesting technology, and if too many people abuse it, it might be shut down, and that would be a pity.
What kind of encryption does LoRaWAN use?
LoRaWAN uses 128-bit AES encryption.
ECB or?
It depends on which messages. It uses ECB for the join message, and that is supposedly okay because a join message never looks the same, or the key is not reused. I'm not sure of the details, but they say that using ECB for that message is okay. And for the other messages, I'm not sure which mode they are using. It's It's one of the combined modes with authentication and encryption. GCM, I think, ASGCM.
How difficult is to program these devices? You once mentioned they run Python.
Yeah, so how difficult is it to program these? For the Python, you have a Python API. It's not harder than using like a TCP communication. I've done some work on Arduinos where there's a library for LoRa. It's called LMIC. It's originally from IBM, but open sourced. And it has a nice API where you send a message, you submit a callback that is called later when the message has been sent. So pretty nice. For the Sigfox hardware that I have with me, it's actually a serial port, and you send AT commands, like the good old modem days. You send an AT command that says, send this message, and then you tack on the message in base64 encoding, and that's it. So that's also pretty easy. And there are Arduino libraries, if you're into that kind of stuff, that can make it even easier.
Where in the OSI layer model will you place this? Is this like level 3 or 4?
Yeah, that's good. I should have had a slide on that. I'll make sure that I add that later. So that would also answer Matthias' questions. So the physical layer is LoRa. And then for Sigfox, they are a bit more everywhere, but I would say that LoRaWAN and Sigfox is, since you get a HTTP callback when the message arrives, I would say they cover all the way up to the application layer. Yeah. Any more questions?
I can also mention that there actually is an amateur radio version of LoRa called LoRaWAN. That's packet radio over LoRa. And the only 3 people in the world that currently use this is Travis Goodspeed and 2 of his friends. But there are a lot of documentation online on how to build it on an Arduino as well.
Yep.
So that would be like internet-less gateway-to-gateway communication through packet radio. So it's like a zombie apocalypse style communication.
Yeah.
I just got the encryption thing.
Yep.
So it's this page here on the internet. It claims it's AES counter mode with AES CMAC authentication.
Okay.
So that might be correct.
Yeah, AES CMAC and AES counter mode. And that's quite likely, since counter mode allows you to use any block size, or rather any message size, while all the other modes require you to use the exact amount of bytes. And I think the block size is 16 bytes, regardless if it's AES 128 or 256.
I didn't understand this. You say you have a symmetrical, for encryption you have a symmetrical key. So that key must be agreed.
It's the key is pre-provisioned when you buy a Sigfox device. For LoRa, you'll have to put it into your code and into the backend or your application.
Okay, so there's no communication agreement there, because
There is for the shared key to get everything started needs to be pre-provisioned, and for Sigfox, that when you buy a Sigfox device, that's done. You get the ones I buy, you get a product activation code, and that's the encryption key that you need to enter then on the server side. For LoRa, you take care of that yourself, since you have more control but also more responsibility. And then they use that key to negotiate new keys, and that uses the downlink feature. So, but since activation is usually done just once in the lifetime, it's okay to use the downlink's capacity.
But you use that key in order to get hold of a session key, correct?
Yes. I'll see if I have. I probably was a
And
bit
then you need to
quick
remember
there.
that session key, so it's not totally stateless
Uh,
in that sense.
No, in that sense, well, it is possible to dynamically generate a new session key for each message. But then you would consume the downlink, so you would only be able to send 10 per day. But that is possible, and that might be good for some applications if you don't need to send very often. On the other hand, you can also then keep the state or keep the session key on your device, but then you should probably have it in some sort of secure storage, like a secure element. And those parts with secure elements is actually something that if someone knows someone that I should talk to learn more about crypto suites and libraries and secure elements for embedded devices, I would be very happy to learn more about that, because I don't know enough myself.